I was worried about something that was going to happen the next day at work. Nothing at all I could do about it at the time. Has that ever happened to you guys? See, my brain was wired, I need to fix this now, but I couldn't fix it now. So I had to give it to God. We make mountains out of molehills, right? See, God gave me a wake-up call, an actual wake-up call. Woke me up in the middle of the night. It was about my new job, something I had to do at work the next day. And I realized I'm overwhelmed. There's going to be questions coming up that I can't answer. And God told me, talk to your boss about that. He doesn't know that that's an issue. I slept like a baby after that. Woke up, called my boss, let him know. He shows up, his boss shows up, and this meeting ends up being a great success that I would have completely blown. What this is an upstream problem. What an upstream problem is a problem that you see the result of the problem, but you're not seeing what the actual problem is. The real problem lies way back. There's a solution, but it's not the actual result of the problem. I'm going to give you a little description here. All right, there's a guy in the river. He's floating down. He's yelling for help. And another guy happens to be on the side of the river. He pulls him up on the side of the river and asks if he's okay, and he is. He's sitting on the side of the river and resting. As he's resting, another guy is coming down the river, yelling for help. He runs back into the river and pulls this guy out of the river, sets him on the side, asks if he's okay, and then he's resting. Then all of a sudden, there's two people coming down the river. He can only save one, but he's got somebody with him. The first guy is now rested. He runs in, pulls the two people out of the river. At this point, they're now asking questions, right? Why are these people coming out of the river? But they still don't say anything. All of a sudden, there's three people coming down the river. Now all three of the two rested ones and the original one run back in the river and pull these three guys out of the river. As they pull them out, they say, what is happening? Why are these people in the river? And they said, there's a guy up the river throwing people in. Then all of a sudden, 4 people are coming down the river. And as they're coming down the river, they pull them out. Again, there's a guy up the river pulling people out of or throwing people in the river. Then more people are coming down the river, and one guy starts to walk away. Everybody looks at him and says, aren't you happy that you were saved? Why aren't you helping? And he says, I'm going up the river because I'm going to stop the guy from throwing people in the river. See, the problem that they were seeing was people coming down the river. And they could have spent all day there pulling people out of the river, and it would have just kept coming. But there's a source of the problem. The source of the problem was up the river, upstream. That's an upstream problem. You got to go solve the source. See, we aren't built to do it alone. So a little wake-up call for me, there was a quick fix the next day when I contacted my boss. Everything was settled. But I couldn't do it alone. My boss didn't expect me to handle that situation. He just needed me to ask for the help. He didn't know I needed the help. God made me to feel that issue at the right time, at a time that I could do nothing about it, so that I knew to step back and give that problem to God. Why would I want to handle that problem on my own? In my issue, I thought I can handle this, I'm fine. But I wasn't. I was getting questions, like I said, I didn't know the answer to. I couldn't handle it. Couldn't do it myself. Problems that if you fix the result of the problem, don't solve the problem. You have to go to the source. Let's turn to Joshua 3:13. This is how God solves upstream problems for us. In these verses, the Israelites are about to cross into the promised land. The dream is finally coming true, but they still want to do one more thing, and there's a big problem. They need to cross the Jordan River. One big problem. The river is flooded. It's rainy season, it's overflowing, and the current is too strong. In verse 13, and it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, upstream, and they shall stand upon a heap. And when it came to pass, when the people removed their tents to pass over the Jordan, and the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and they that bear the ark came upon the Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for the Jordan River overflows all his banks at the time of harvest. The waters which came down from above, upstream, stood and rose upon a heap very far from the city Adam. Very far from the city Adam, that is beside Zaratan. And those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the salt of the sea, failed and were cut off, and the people were passed over right against Jericho. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. The Israelites. What a miserable bunch, right? Spent 40 years in the wilderness before they got to this point because they refused to give their problems to God. They wanted to blame him. They wanted to attack him. They wanted more all the time. Never satisfied. Sound familiar? How long have we been wandering in the wilderness of our problems, trying to solve the problems that God gave us, or that God has constantly told us to give him? How much longer do you want to keep holding on to your problems? 40 years? You got them? You got 40 years? I don't. Neither did most of the Israelites. That's why most of them didn't make it. They finally got it when Moses died and Joshua took over. Maybe we should trust God and do what he tells us to do, and he'll take care of us. He told us to put our feet in the Jordan, and we'll be able to cross. See, this is a little bit lesser known miracle than the parting of the Red Sea. The parting of the Red Sea, when you look at it, it's amazing. Right in front of them, it happens, right? This one, the water doesn't stop right in front of them. They don't walk on top of the water. Well, folks, what happened was most likely, what is believed, is that there was an earthquake or some other natural disaster that caused boulders and things to fall in the river in Adam. This is 20 miles away. 20 miles away is where the water stopped. So what happens is this earthquake hits the water. All the water stops 20 miles away. But the water where they were at was still there. They're walking, and as soon as their feet hit the water, that's when the water stops. So that means God had to time it. Exactly the right time. The water stopped. And then the river flows for 20 miles before it's dry for them to cross. Right when their feet hit the water, that's when it stops. God solved their problem upstream. See, the Jordan River was the result of the problem, right? The source of the problem was up in Adam. What were the Israelites going to do when they got there? If they wanted to solve that on their own, were they going to grab a bucket and start pulling out the water from the river? That's how we solve our problems. We're bailing ourselves out over and over and over again, but we never even look at the source of the problem. See, they knew where the promised land was. They knew how to get there. But if they didn't trust God, they could have tried to solve this on their own. Like I said, they could have tried to bail themselves out. But most likely they would have done something really silly and tried to do it the human way in their own mind. If someone is already solving your problem, why would you want to mess with it? My wife, she always wants me to do things without being asked, right? Right? Can you do that without me having to ask you? Please, right? This is her problem. She asks me to do the dishes all the time. And I say okay, because that is the only acceptable answer. 10 minutes later, she does them herself. And why did she do that? Because she has not seen the result yet. She didn't trust that I was going to do what she asked me to do. Or maybe I wouldn't do them to her standards. Maybe I just didn't want to do them when she wanted them done. So she decided to solve the problem. But tomorrow the dishes need done again. And she's going to ask me to do them again. And I'm going to say okay again. And she's going to do them again. What problem is she solving? She's bailing herself down the river, right? See, that's how we screw things up. God's timing is perfect. Some of your problems, God has already told you He's got it handled. But you think, because you haven't seen the result yet, it's not handled. You ask for His help, but you think He probably needs my help with this. You still stress about it. Even to the point that you're mad that it's still a problem. Am I right? So what my wife doesn't realize is that with the dishes, I have just as much need for those dishes to be done as she does. If she never, ever does the dishes, I will always do the dishes without being asked. Because eventually, I'm going to need some silverware. Eventually, there's a pan that I need to make dinner in. There's going to be a reason that I need to have the dishes done. So, if you want all your problems taken care of, do it in God's time. See, His timing is perfect. We talked about that already. He's perfect in all of His ways. He's already stopped the river 20 miles upstream. And you don't trust Him with it only because you haven't seen the result. Upstream problem, and nothing that you do downstream can do anything about it at all. When I lost my job earlier this year, I felt lost. I don't like uncertainty. Nobody really does. I have a family to think about. I have a mortgage. I have a car payment. All of these things start to get in your head. These are problems. But I gave it to God. I knew that I needed a job. He knew that I needed a job even before I asked Him. But what I did was I asked God to put me where He could use me. Put me in the place that I'm supposed to be for His will. His will be done. What happened is I started applying for jobs. Nobody was biting. Nobody was calling me. This happened for a couple of weeks. I started to get a little nervous because I think my resume is pretty good. My wife helped me with it. She does a good job. She knows to tell me how to lie on that thing just a little, right? No. But she's very good at resumes. She's helped me with it. And I'm putting out this resume, and I have pretty good accolades to my name, I think. But I'm not getting any calls. I'm praying to God about it, just saying, hey, I gave this to you. I trust you. I know you're going to put me in the right place. Then I got a call from my boss, my old boss, the one I'd been fired from. And he told me to reach out to another guy. This guy is the guy I blame for me being fired. He was an outside company that came into our company and started talking to my boss. Let him know that where he saw inefficiencies and issues, and he pointed at me. So I blamed him. I mean, I did live 1,300 miles away from a roofing company that I was running and trying to lead, right? So maybe, just maybe, that might have been a little bit of the problem, right? But I had to blame someone. But you can see how crazy that sounds, right? Reach out to this guy. So I didn't do it right away. I waited a couple of days, a couple more days. Then my old boss calls me back again. He's like, hey, have you reached out to Adam? And I said, no, but I think I'm going to. And then I do. Obviously, I'm thinking, this is crazy. Why would this guy want me? He's the reason I don't work there anymore. But as I reach out to him, a week later, I have an interview. And during this interview, I'm pretty much offered the job on the spot. God was working for me. So here's what happened with that. My start date was still a couple of weeks away. And I thought, how do I know that's what God really wanted for me? I mean, sure, this door flung wide open for me. And God said, right this way, sir. But I'm thinking, I'm still not sure. I'm going to start applying to more jobs. And I did. And all of a sudden, I started getting calls for interviews, multiple. I started going to these interviews, and then they were progressing. I was at a third interview at one of them. And I started getting worried. I'm like, you know what? I've already got a job lined up. What will I do if I get offered more than one? And I prayed to God about it. I was like, hey, will you please shut the doors if it's not where I'm supposed to go? And God said, oh, no. I already told you where to go. Now you're going to figure it out. I got offered 2 more jobs, and there was a third one probably on the way. And I was struggling in my head. Where am I supposed to be? God, where am I supposed to be? And God keeps smacking me on the head. I already told you where to be. So eventually I called those other places up. I canceled one of the interviews that I knew I was about to get offered the job at, and shut down all of those avenues. And I realized I was solving that downstream problem when my problem was already solved 20 miles ago, upstream. It was over. But I didn't trust that because the result hadn't happened yet. I was still technically unemployed for 2 weeks after I got the job because that wasn't my start date. I look back on that, I really, just makes me laugh. Just makes me laugh. See, when we don't give our problems to God, when we don't say, your will be done, we do things our own way. We do things like we look at a map. We're the Israelites. And we say, wait a minute, on this map, 30 miles up the river, it's thinner. It's much shorter distance. We can cross there. And then we go there instead of where God told us to go. Then God's earthquake happens. Boom, water stops. The area that you thought was going to be better is now overflowed, flooded. You can't cross no matter what. But where you would have gone is dry ground. Don't do it your way. Let God do his thing. Your will be done. So what is your problem? How bad is it? When you run into a problem that seems insurmountable, I want you to think about it a little bit. What's the worst thing that could actually happen? Well, to answer that question, majority of people would say the worst thing that can happen to anyone is death, right? Well, I'm going to tell you a story here. I used to pray for my airplane to land safe when I got on it. Then I realized I'm praying wrong. Jesus told us how to pray. Your will be done. So when I get on a plane now, I pray before takeoff for his peace and that whatever is to happen with this plane, your will be done. I never think about it crashing, ever. If it did, I know God's going to use that, and it's going to be for something big. See, this prayer has flooded my life. If I'm praying for you, if I tell you I'm praying for you, I'm not praying that God removes you from your situation. I apologize. But what I'm asking for is for God's will in your life. See, if I die, God's going to use that for something big, like I said. But I'm going to heaven. Why am I worried about death? The worst thing that can happen is I go to heaven and God uses my death for something huge on earth. Let's turn to Romans 8, please, 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Do you know God? Do you know Jesus? Is he your Savior? then you got nothing to worry about. Nothing. See, I never understood what God's peace was until my mom died. That's when I really understood what it was. God used her death to me more than her life. And God can do the same for me and any one of you. Most of our problems are upstream problems. We're trying to solve them by fixing the result of the problem. But what we really need to do, find that source of the problem. Here's the hard truth. The source of your problem, when I look back on my life, almost every single problem I've ever had, the source of my problem, I can pinpoint it. And it's right here. It's me. To a lesser extent, my wife. But, sorry. I need to lighten it up sometimes. Sorry. But understand this. You need to give all of your problems to God. And when I say all of your problems, I don't just mean every single problem. I mean the entire problem. God's going to work on the source of the problem. And if the source is you, guess what is about to happen? That's right. You're going to be the one that gets worked on. The result, because it's the source, is not always immediate. But in the future, that problem will never exist again. If you let him work on the source. If he works on you and you're the problem, that problem you're in will never happen again. In the extremely unlikely result, or the scenario that you are not the problem, there's still a source of that problem, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? You got Christ, right? Like we said, you got Christ. You got heaven. The worst thing that can happen is God turns it into something good. That's it. Today, guys, I had my bike stolen. 2 really nice bikes. But here's what I see. We were down at the beach, as we do almost every Sunday. Locked our bikes up. My wife's doing her thing. I'm doing mine. Both having a little workout. We come back and the bikes are gone. Well, actually, I apologize. There's a step before this. It begins to rain just a little bit. Then it starts to rain a little bit harder. Her class ends early because of this rain, and we're heading back to our bikes, which are not there. Had that not ended early, I might not be here on time today because we then had to walk home. The rain was a problem that solved another problem. I love God's work. Perfect in all of his ways. So when the bikes were taken, I was a little upset. My wife was a little more upset. Albert knows. You don't want to upset her. I only do it when I'm way up here. But as I'm going home, and I'm walking home, I'm starting to think, why would this happen, right? And I'm praying, you know what? I already knew what I was going to talk about today. Your will be done. So what I did was, God, your will be done. Anyone who touches those bikes, work in their life. Because that's the source of that problem. I don't have a bike, but I don't care. I don't need that bike. That person clearly needed it more than I did. But God can take that and use that for something really good that I could never do with that bike. Your will be done. I'm going to go into fear a little bit here. Pastor used this verse a couple of weeks ago. 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear has torment. He that fears is not made perfect in love. And how is love going to cast out fear? Here's how. There's only one perfect love, God's love. And if you have that love, you already know God's in control. You know that all things are going to work together for good, even when it makes no sense. You stop thinking about yourself and you focus on Him. His plan is eternal. Everything you fear is temporary. If you have fear in a situation, I can promise you that you have not fully given that to God, because His love would have casted out that fear. He that fears is not made perfect in love. That's not condemnation. You can be afraid and still be in God. You can still be afraid and be going to heaven. But your fear exists because you choose to hang on to it. And I can't for the life of me understand why anybody would want to hold on to that fear. Why would I want to be anxious? Why would I want to worry when I already know the truth? God wins, and I'm on His team. That means I win. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Why do you think this is there? Lean not on your own understanding. That's because we're stupid. Human beings are incredibly stupid. Me and Albert, we talk about this all the time when I'm driving him around. But here's a scenario I like to use. One man. I figured it out. I know how everything happened. I know how the universe was created. I got this. In the beginning of the universe, there was nothing. But then there was this big explosion that happened. Wait, the other guy. Wait, what caused the explosion if there was nothing there? Oh, wait, no, I meant there was this ball, right? And then a spark happened, and then there was this explosion. And all of these perfect spheres are now flying around the universe, spinning at a constant rate, and just that's how it happened. Okay, you got it. The guy says, "Where did the ingredients come from?" Magic, right? Magic. That's got to be it. No, let's just ignore that. Trust the science. So then this ball explodes. These spheres are flying around, spinning in circles. How does that work, right? There's a star, right? What's a star? It's hydrogen and helium, right? They're flying around really, really fast and having this constant energy happening, and that's what's creating these stars. Well, eventually those stars, they're going to explode. And we know that because these other stars are exploding, so it has to have happened. It's going to happen, right? They're under extreme pressure. Well, it's hydrogen and helium. How much pressure is hydrogen and helium, right? A lot? Yeah. Helium is not flammable. So as hydrogen becomes helium, is that really it? I don't think so. I mean, I'm confused by the whole thing, but I'm sure you are too, right? Where you got questions? Well, first guy says, "You're so dumb. It's just gravity. That's what's doing it, right? It's gravity." Well, what causes gravity? Magic? I don't know. Why? There's no explanation for this. Well, anyways, the star warms up these other spinning spheres just enough. They're millions of miles away, but they're so hot, it's warming up these spheres to the point that some of them have liquid water on them. And then those planets, that we're going to call them, they just decide they're going to have life on them now. But how? Look, bacteria becomes monkeys, monkeys become people, okay? Put it in a book. That's what happened. So God's got to laugh at us. We're silly. Even if all of that is true, how did it happen? It requires miracle after miracle after miracle for any of that to happen. So many miracles, there's no way you can deny a creator. We can't just be here because of an explosion that happened billions of years ago. You ever blown something up and had life come out of it? Don't think so. Yeah. See, the truth is God planned everything right from the start. And that includes you and your life. It's perfect. Look back as far as you can, like I said. Everything is perfect. Don't be short-sighted and look at your problems. Zoom out. You can see God working. When you don't know it, God's using you in the midst of your problem. An example I'm going to give you, the lies and everyday things. And oddly enough, this kind of falls into a little of what happened to me today. It kind of makes me laugh. But you're walking to the store. You have $10 to your name. You need something that costs $9.99. During your walk, you're thinking and realizing that if it's $9.99, there's a little bit of tax on that. It's going to cost more than that. You get worried and you pray to God for help. As you pray, it starts to rain, just a little bit. Then the rain picks up and it starts to pour. You walk faster and you look up and you say, really? Just as you do that, you trip and fall right on your face. But then you look to your right and there's a $5 bill right there that you would have never seen where you were just walking and there was no rain. God will supply all your needs. Now let's zoom out just a little bit. During this time, there was a drought. No rain for weeks, and it's been hot. Your plants, your yard, your garden, they're all starting to wither. They just got watered for free. A bird came by trying to get out of the rain and fertilized your garden. Your garden is now going to begin to grow again, return to health. The rain also brought in some cooler air. When you were walking, you happened to see a homeless man that you didn't think about. But he was wheezing, really struggling to breathe because it had been so hot. This rain brought in that cooler air and gave him some refreshment. Let's back up some more. The farmers, miles away, struggling to grow their crops. It was getting to a point where it was going to start costing more to keep those crops watered than it was to even sell them. They might have lost the harvest. Now instead of the crops cost rising, God's going to make it rain over and over again to save those crops. Why does that matter to you? Because the cost of goods at your store are directly related to how much their harvest is. The wild animals in the woods were struggling, but now they have plentiful water. There was a dam put in place that creates electricity from the water. It was not doing so hot. Now it's overflowing, creating more electricity. So now that electricity bill that you had that was going to rise is now going to hold steady. Zoom out more. Look at the entire world. You don't even see you anymore. God's plan is a thing of beauty. You don't see problems. You see works in progress. You see the world as a perfectly organized garden. Plants produce oxygen that we breathe. We produce carbon dioxide that they breathe. They are fertilized by bees that are fuzzy for no reason whatsoever, just so they can have pollen on them. The sky magically produces water just when they need it. Plants drop their seeds like they know when they're supposed to. Then those plants feed animals, and then we eat those animals. This happens, and a million other things happen just so we can have life. And we don't have to do anything for any of that to happen. Zoom back in. You were upset it was raining. You had a problem, but in fact you had several problems you didn't know anything about. God solved them all upstream, just like that. Next you walk into the store. That item that you were going to buy is now $2 off. You see another item that you knew in 2 days, I'm going to need that, but you didn't think you could afford it. Now you get the extra money. That was $5. Then, for no reason whatsoever, as you're checking out, you think of that homeless man that you saw on the way and how parched he was. And you think, I have an extra $1. I'm going to get him a bottle of water. For some reason, you've forgotten your own problems and you've put somebody else's. You bring it to him on your way home, and he begins to cry. He begins to cry because he was just asking God, why have you forgotten me? Why am I struggling? And now he knows God's not forgotten me. God still got me on his mind. You pray with him. You invite him to church. He rededicates his life to God. He finds a homeless shelter that he never knew existed. He now has a place to sleep and clean up. He finds a job and turns his life around. All of that because of some inconvenient rain. So you don't see most of that happen. I know that my bikes, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to do something. I may never see them again, maybe I will. But they're going to make an impact on whoever touches them, because I prayed for that. I prayed for God's will with those bikes. Your problems, tiny in comparison to this world. When you sit and focus on that rain and you fall wet in the mud, not even realizing how much you're being blessed at that exact moment. There's people out there that are missing God. They're dying and going to hell. That is a real problem. See, if you have God, all of your problems are just problems. They only exist in those quotes. They only exist until you give them to God. Philippians 4:19. My God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. Do you believe that? If you do, you already know that your problem has already been solved. 20 miles upstream. You haven't seen the result yet. You and I, we're eternal. Our fears are silly. If Jesus comes back today, or you're called home in any other way, what happens to your problems? They're gone. They cease to exist. You're going to heaven. You're not going to be on your way to heaven upset about how someone treated you here on earth. You're not going to be going to heaven worried about your job. You're not going to be going to heaven upset about your stolen bike. You need to let God work on the source of your problems. Let God work on you. See, if God was just to take you out of all your problems, but you're the source of the problem, what good would it do? Let's say you're deep in debt, and God pulls you out of that debt, but you're still no good with money. You don't know how to live within your means. How long until you're right back in debt? You're an angry person, and God solves the person that you're angry with. Says, I'm going to take care of this. This guy's going to apologize to you, and you're no longer angry. But you're not the kind of person who has learned to forgive. How long until you're angry again? Some of these problems are there for your good. Some of those problems you have to go through in order to solve the source of the problem, which is deep inside of you and your heart. God is in that problem with you every time. They're for your good. You need to go through them. So ask God, what do I need to learn? God is working through you in that problem. Just like my example in the rain. In the midst of your struggles, God wants to take your worries away, solve your problems, but he wants to use you in that situation to bless others. Make an impact on this world with the real problem, the source of that problem. I have one more story for you, a little Father's Day special. Turn to Luke 15:11. He also said, a man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate I have coming to me. So he distributed the assets to him. Not many days later, the younger son gathered together all he had and traveled to a distant country where he squandered his estate in foolish living. After he had spent everything, a severe famine struck the country, and he had nothing. Then he went to work for one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to eat his fill from the carob pods the pigs were eating, but no one would give him any. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have more than enough food, and I am here dying of hunger? I'll get up, go to my father, and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired hands.' So he got up and went to his father. But while the son was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against you and heaven. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father told his slaves, 'Quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Then bring the fatted calf and slaughter it. Let's celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate." The prodigal son. He had a lot of self-made problems, didn't he? He already had it made before any of those started, but he didn't see it. His father had already set him up for life. All he ever needed to do was stay with the father. But the son had some issues, just like we all do, right? He loved the world. He began living it up, trading his inheritance for the pleasures of the world, only to find that what he thought he wanted gave him nothing. It was over faster than it started. That's when the son realized that the result of his problem was that he's now poor and begging for food from a pig's trough. But the source of his problem, that was him. He needed a change of heart. Then he looked back in his time of trouble, realizing, I'm not going down the right path. He knew that if he came back to his father would be merciful. He knew that his father would at least give him a job and feed him the way he did his hired hands. In this time, he learned humility. He learned to serve. He learned that his father would take care of him. He learned that if he would just run to his father, all his troubles would be over. He didn't realize that his father would also give him way more than he deserved. He would welcome him with open arms. You get more than you ask for, way more than you deserve, every time. I'm going to try to sing a little song here. Very nervous, so if you know it, help me out. But it just kind of speaks to what we talked about. I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. Yeah, I see it now. I'm laying it down. And I know that I need you. I run to the Father. I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding. No reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon. My soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Thank you, guys. If you got a problem, it's time to give it to God. If you're the source of that problem, don't stand in his way. Let him work on you. Dear Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the opportunity to let you use me. I thank you for solving my problems upstream so that I don't have to think about them. I pray that you will keep your hand on everyone here. Direct them as you see fit. Show them your way. Show them what they need. In Jesus' name, amen. I forgot to pray for the offering, but we'll just do that real quick. Oh, and Lord, Lord, please bless this offering. Bless the gift and the giver, Lord. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.